It's funny, the this survey, the Myers-Briggs type indicator, it's something that I think has been used over and over and over again. I've seen it pop up in each of the high school settings that I've been in, and every single time this pops up, as far as, using it in student scenarios, I can see in the students' faces that they get a little frustrated with it. And I think at the heart of it, what it is they're frustrated at, not at the fact that they're getting to know something a little bit more about themselves, but more, I think, the fact that surveys are being used as kind of communication devices between the mentors and the students. I don't think the students dispute the fact that, finding out some cool new bits of information can help them. But I've sort of seen time and time again that becomes the singularity through which the students are sort of understood, or it becomes part of a project or a very highly focused task. And you can just see how the students get worn down by it. I kind of had that as a starting point when I saw this pop up as a module. I will say though, I enjoy doing these surveys. I enjoy trying to kind of go deep with some of the questions, and often it takes me a little bit longer to do the survey. And I've even, done surveys once or twice just to see how much I can modulate the responses. This one in particular I've done a few times, and each time I've ended up in a very similar space. So my code on it is ENFP-A, and in this particular test that it identifies me as the campaigner, and the typical role would be me as a diplomat, and my strategy is people mastery. Now that could have a very heavy, almost Machiavellian type of kind of tone to it, but in this case, across all the sort of categories, that people mastery had to do with developing the soft skills of getting to know people and engaging in social situations and demonstrating active listening and curiosity and divergent thinking. So all very sort of positive on the front end. And it is interesting that in a lot of ways, my career in education so far, I've spent a lot of time jumping in sort of with both feet into new experiences and varied experiences. And I was just saying to my spouse the other night that I've come to accept the fact that I am not a single school educator. I have come to accept the fact that what I really love about working in education, one of the things I really love about working in education is the fact that I can be a bit of a traveler. And what I've seen in my career so far is that I seek out new schools to try and learn more about this job that is so big. I'm never gonna learn everything that I'm curious about it, but I've also had to accept the fact that if I don't go and experience other schools, then I'm not satisfying sort of like this deep-seated curiosity that I have about education. And education is my second career. Prior to this, I was working in hospitality, and that very much was a very close silo, as in I was working for some time in one restaurant, making money for somebody else, and every move within it was sort of always tied to a budget line. So I didn't always get to exercise all the creativity that I wanted to do or explore everything that I wanted to explore, because ultimately I was having to satisfy the dollars and cents. What I really appreciate about working in education is that there are similar positions at different schools that will elicit an entirely new experience. And this kind of leads me to one of the challenges of my personality type, in that I can become fascinated very easily. I can also get distracted very easily. And when those two things kind of come together, sometimes stuff falls off the table, and I'm having to sort of gather it and reconvene my senses in order to really move forward. And on a real practical sense, I suspect that I can be a frustrating partner to work with, because the idea generation doesn't stop. but I often am the one that's delivering the items right at the deadline. In some ways, in my mind, there was never a question that I wasn't going to deliver on whatever task I had to. But because of my curiosity and my independent thinking and my drive to kind of wander and gather all these artifacts, sometimes I'm hard to track and hard to find. And this, in a lot of ways, has become a bit of frustration to some of my colleagues, even though ultimately I can deliver something that is worthwhile and it is from the heart, and it's something that is, if necessary, researched, creative, and interesting. But again, my creativity and my wandering kind of brain, to be honest, I think could even be some undiagnosed adult ADHD in here. I know I've frustrated some of my colleagues. So when I think about what it would be like to counsel someone like me, one of the greatest kind of focus questions that I keep coming back to, and I've tested this or offered it to other students when they're sort of like, there's so many things that I would like to do, sir, I just don't know what to commit to. I've often tried to pull back and anchor them in what are the things that they're doing now, and what are the things that they're doing now that make them feel awesome and spark joy in their daily life. And is there a way to sort of look at these activities with a future lens? So you're not going to seek something on the horizon, which in my case, I just keep running, like I'll keep chasing that horizon and looking. If it's brought back and it's anchored to something that they're doing well right now, so if they're involved in sports, or they're very creative in doing art, or they've already running their small business, or they have an interest in science or coding, what is it about that current activity that we can build some sort of long-range plans for the future in? And to that sort of to that kind of that end is that if you were trying to transition then with that idea of the opportunities that are on the horizon are connected to something that you're doing right now, then I think in a lot of ways it helps to pull a little bit of the distraction off the table. And I think it also helps to isolate kind of like a list of, here's what I need to action next. It's not just, I'm going to gather 1,000 things off there by the time I hit grade 12. I'm going to look at what I'm kind of doing that's cool right now in grade 9 and start having concentrated conversations about my hobbies, about my interests, about my activities right now that could ultimately translate into some sort of pathway beyond post-secondary, whether it's entrepreneur, whether it's a job in itself or some professional activity. I think that one of the strengths that I have in talking to students and even talking with some of my colleagues is my ability to reframe a current situation with more than just the view that is right in front of you. So this is a little bit of the opposite that I might do with a student. I find that often working with some of my colleagues, there's very much, if things are going great, it's going great because what's right in front of you, or if things are going not so great, it's because of what's right in front of you. I like to sort of think of the antecedents. So part of my training and working in special ed is always, what's the thing that happened just before the thing that's happening? And how is that triggering the next behavior? And I like looking at a little bit of that ABC sort of a chart in order to build successes, because pulling the emotional reactivity out of things, which is again part of my identification here in the Myers-Briggs, is my ability to kind of neutralize a little bit over emoting. I can get excited, I appreciate excitement, but I can also kind of navigate some of those emotions and help somebody see what's the actual evidence that's fueling those emotions in front of them. And I think that can be a valuable tool working with teenagers, helping them to understand that how they're feeling isn't who they are or what they are, and that the emotions and the thoughts can be separated. So I look forward to exploring the rest of my classes, portfolios and their profiles, and I appreciate you giving me this moment once again to speak my thoughts. Have an excellent evening.